Let's speak to Dr. Duncan Robertson, an academic at Loughborough University and an expert in modelling and policy analytics. And you have been, I'm told, trawling through the testing data, trying to work out what's going on. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I've been looking at the whole COVID thing since about January and introduced it into my course actually in February. So there's a lot going on and we have much more data at the moment, which is great. So we can see the number of tests that are claimed to be available. And we can see, obviously, what's happened is the demand for these tests has just exceeded supply. And basically, what seems to be happening is they're throttling capacity, which is why people are being told to go 75 miles away, even though there might be a space for a test a mile away. So they're trying to reduce
the government is saying that there is capacity for 350,000 tests a day, but I don't think that many tests are being conducted, are they?
Well, that's right. And if you look at the, you mentioned, in your introduction, the pillars, and one important pillar is pillar 3, which isn't talked about a lot, which is serology testing, which is basically a blood test. So if you have had COVID-19 rather than you do have it. And that's 120,000 out of the 300 or so thousand. And that's not being used at all because, of course, that's not relevant to knowing whether you do have COVID at the moment. So
when we hear about
take
that
out 115 for a start.
Right. OK, so when we hear about that 350,000, that's actually not have I got COVID now testing.
Exactly. That's right.
OK, that's useful to know. So anecdotally, and this is the problem with all of this, we are getting hundreds of people getting in contact with Five Live throughout the day. And we have been for the last week or so, really, saying, I can't get a test, but I'm being sent up to Aberdeen or to Swansea or to, miles from my home if I don't live in those areas. Have you any idea from the data you're looking at why that's happening?
Well, as I say, it appears as though the policy or the strategy of the government or the Department of Health and Social Care is to prioritise testing at areas which have a lot of current infection. So I thought it was really interesting you talked to Professor Donna Hall just there, who obviously knows what's going on in Bolton. And every week, Public Health England get the data and they publish a surveillance report. And if you look at the one that was published 2 weeks ago, the week 35 report, the recommendation there is to take Bolton out or reduce the interventions in Bolton. And then if you remember, there was a whole sort of hoo-ha in Bolton. And then eventually at the last minute, it was decided they should be kept in the measures that are currently there. So if you look at the data from 2 weeks ago, Bolton had an incidence of 18.9 cases per 100,000, OK? And the cutoff is somewhere around 50. That's what Germany use, 50 cases per 100,000 for interventions. And now it's 206 cases per 100,000 in Bolton. So it's gone up from 18.9 to 206 in just under 3 weeks. So the problem is, if you take away testing capacity from places like Bolton, where you think there isn't a lot of incidents, you just don't detect the outbreaks that are happening or could be happening. So, for example, where I live, I have to travel 75 miles away. I have no idea from the data whether there are outbreaks near me because that data isn't coming through because people aren't able to get tests. Therefore, we don't know how many people are getting have cases where I live or where everybody lives.
So the point is you can't really limit testing. You can't focus it on these particular hotspots because you need to have mass testing everywhere to be able to predict where infections are rising next.
Well, you certainly don't want to be reducing it down to very low levels around the country. So exactly, one of the reasons is surveillance. So you're trying to work out where the fires are at the moment. And if nobody's looking for fires, you basically don't do them. I mean, the other way of looking at it is the whole thing about getting away from national lockdowns is the government strategy was, if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, it was talked about this whack-a-mole strategy. So, where outbreaks take place, we then basically stamp down on them. And of course, in order to do whack-a-mole, you need to know where these moles are. And at the moment, we don't.
So do we just need more labs, more scientists?
We need more tests and we need people to get those results back as quickly as possible. And I think, as Professor Hall was saying, there is capacity in the NHS and as opposed to the commercial testing. And, there's a letter from the Prime Minister to Vice Chancellors a few days ago saying, do you have any capacity? So, yes, I completely agree with Donna that NHS capacity should be boosted for tests. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Duncan Robertson, who's been looking at all the data around testing there from Loughborough University.